Hello, everybody, and welcome to Weaving Math and Personal Finance in the Classroom. This is a free webinar with me, Melissa. Since we had some technical difficulties with the webinars themselves live, I decided to record a better version of the webinar so that I could be clear with the content. So welcome. As I said, my name is Melissa, and I am currently a curriculum developer on the NGPF team. I also work on business development and advocacy and do some work with the website. So welcome. It is the fourth quarter for all of you, so happy fourth quarter. I hope that you're enjoying spring. I hope your students aren't too antsy since it's getting towards the end of the year, and that all of that great weather has been engaging them even more. The objectives for this webinar are to discuss why personal finance and math can be taught together, to highlight examples of our new product, Chugs, in order to weave math and personal finance together. I'll also show you some resources that NGPF already have that we've organized into a math resource directory. And then we'd also like to discuss some areas of the classroom instruction that can easily incorporate math if you're a personal finance teacher or vice versa. Since I am recording this, I won't be answering any on-the-spot questions, although I will discuss some questions that teachers had throughout the 2 takes of the webinar. All right, so let's get started. It's a match. Personal finance and math fit together. So an example of this is the financial algebra class that is quite popular at some schools. In this class, the idea is to teach algebra through the lens of finance. And that is because the two fit really well together. So you'll notice that a trend with Chugs and other resources is a lot of algebra that students are doing. In addition, numeracy is a goal of both math courses and personal finance courses alike. In personal finance course, you want students to use the numbers to make decisions, and obviously in math, understanding and making sense of the numbers and variables that represent the numbers. And also with math and personal finance, you can very easily align Common Core standards with FinCap or FinLit standards, which allows you to teach both things at once and kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. In addition, the examples I have on the screen show you that there are subjects where math fits in pretty intentionally because the personal finance concept itself is based on the math. So the case for teaching them together. So, if it's a match wasn't convincing enough, the idea of interleaving for enduring understanding might be a little bit better argument. The idea of interleaving has to do with the way that people retain information. So oftentimes with students, we do this idea of mass presentation, where we teach a topic in full, one at a time, and we don't usually return to that topic very often. But the idea of interleaving is that you, instead of teaching one topic in full, you teach one topic in chunks and intersperse other topics within that topic. And by the end of that scheme, students actually retain that information better. So in this case, if you're learning a particular math concept in math class, and then 3 months later you get to practice that math concept again in your personal finance class, or vice versa, that student is going to retain that information more in the long run, which is the hope we all have. We want them to do well in their assessments, obviously, but what we really want them to do is take what we learned from our classroom and use it in life. And so the idea would be that, if you're a math teacher, for instance, and you're incorporating the personal finance, then that personal finance concept that they learned with their personal finance teacher will be a lot stronger in their memory. And the same goes for when you're teaching a personal finance class, as I said, and you're incorporating the math. That curve at the bottom of your screen just sort of summarizes the idea that there's a learning curve and a forgetting curve. And if you interleave, you're actually getting at that learning curve before forgetting happens. So the idea, interleaving is backed by research, and it helps students make a lot of connections, which leads to as I said, better retention. So for those of you who are not very familiar with our brand new product, Number Chugs, that we just released, I'm going to show you how to access that. I'm also going to show you how to access the NGPF Math Resource Directory. So if we head to our website, ngpf.org, we'll notice that at the top of the screen you have this menu bar of items. Since Number Chugs is a type of resource, we go to Resources and we scroll down and we see Number Chugs new, and that'll go away soon once they're not new anymore. But we click on Number Chugs, and we are brought to our Number Chug page, organized as all of our pages are into unit topics. So if I wanted to find, for instance, a credit Number Chug, then I'd head to Managing Credit. I'd see, oh, great, there's a credit card conundrum Number Chug, and I'd head to said Number Chug. So that's how you find the Number Chugs. In addition to Number Chugs, on the same page, you'll also be able to view the Math Resource Directory, which is a button at the bottom of the screen, and I'll be discussing both Number Chugs and the Math Resource Directory in a second. So other than accessing these math resources, I thought I'd explain to you a little bit more about what these resources are. So Number Chugs are a brand new type of NGPF resource, and their goal is to marry the personal finance concepts with computation. So the idea is that students have to compute values and make sense of those values. So it's very numeracy based, but they're practicing math skills in the process, and they're either learning or reviewing personal finance concepts at the same time. There are teacher support notes on that same page I showed you at the top of the screen, in case you want to go over any of the information, but I'm about to present it to you verbally, so I'm not going to show it to you right now. So the idea of Number Chugs is obviously, as I said, to do practice computation and math skills in the context of personal finance, but also to allow for differentiation and a growth through Bloom's taxonomy. So any number chug that you find, and I'll show the example that I just pulled up, called Credit Card Conundrum, will have 3 sections. It'll have a comprehend section, an apply section, and an extend section. And what that means is that in the comprehend section, you're really working on the part of Bloom's taxonomy that's in the bottom range, the knowledge and comprehension. And this will ask students to maybe recall something, maybe make a very direct calculation where there's not much thinking or not much sense making, but they have to, do a simple calculation that's directly asked of them or recall a piece of information. In the apply section of the number chug, you're really looking mostly at this application, but also potentially at some of this analysis. And in that section, you're asking students to go from the comprehension and knowledge to now applying that to a different circumstance or considering different information, which would be that application and analysis piece. And then in the extend section, we're really looking for either higher level analysis or synthesis. So we're really asking students to put the pieces together themselves, and we're not giving them as much scaffolding. So that's kind of the concept. And this allows students to differentiate based on their particular math skill level, but also, based on a number of factors like speed or math background. So I'll keep walking you through this idea by showing you how number chugs work. So I give you an overview of the credit card conundrum in terms of the 3 sections. I'll show you another one called Let's Go Bitcoining, which is quite popular because Bitcoin is a very hot, hip topic, and it's hard to explain. So hopefully this will help you. As you notice, on the top of each number chug, there is a box that shows you the Common Core math standards that are aligned with the practice in the number chug. And then it also shows you some of the light Common Core knowledge that students should have. So for instance, on this one, if they're doing the comprehend and apply sections, they should probably have analyzed a graph before. They should know what like a percent is, and maybe have heard of the term growth rate. And then in addition, in personal finance, they should know like, okay, a cryptocurrency is like not a physical currency, right? Okay, I get that. And maybe they know something about energy, electricity, and carbon emissions, because they're going to have to analyze that later in the number chug. Each number chug gives a short introduction, so if students are very unfamiliar with the personal finance concept, that will be explained here. For instance, math teachers might want to use that with their students in case they know quite a bit about the math they're going to be doing on the sheet, but they're like, never heard of Bitcoin before. And then each number chug lays out a scenario. For instance, this number chug lays out the 50-cent Bitcoin situation where he sold some albums to fans, and he says he's a Bitcoin millionaire now. We found out he lied, actually, but in case he didn't lie, we're going to see how much money his Bitcoin would be worth according to its growth rate over a certain period of time. It's very fascinating and very indicative of its volatility. They're also, going to this extend section, having to put all the pieces together to think about the energy expenditure of mining for Bitcoin, which is what's happening when transactions are being made. The bottom of each number chug and its answer key will have two boxes. The blue box will be useful math resources that teachers and students alike can use. So if you're a teacher who's a personal finance teacher and you're not that familiar, or you kind of forgot how to teach the math, which is fair, we've included some useful resources that you can use for yourself to review, or you can give to your students in case they need support or help. So maybe this is a homework assignment, or maybe you ask them to look at those math resources for homework. In addition, we will give you this orange box, which are related personal finance resources. So in case you're a math teacher and you want to do a little more with the personal finance, or in case you're a personal finance teacher and you want to see where this might fit in the curriculum. So that is kind of a layout of what a number chug looks like. And this is an example, this is an example of an answer key. So the answer keys will look much like the answer key does, but all answers will be in red. Now, if you're familiar with NGPF, you'll know that we have answer keys for everything, but the answer keys are on that sheet that you get when you are verified as a teacher. So if you don't have an account, go to our website and make an account right now for the answer keys. But what you'll notice is these answer keys are a little different. They are step-by-step guides into the math and analysis. And we also provide tips and notes in the answer key so that if you're not that used to teaching the math, or you want an explanation for why it's written the way it is or something like that, those will be given to you. And the tips will help you if you want to edit the problem. So I've put a tip sometimes on the number chugs that's like, if your students have never heard or can't recall this equation because the math class was 2 years ago, just copy and paste it here, something like that. All right, so that's kind of a general overview of what number chugs look like. These 3 number chugs are pretty popular, so I included them as an examples, but as I said, there are 8 number chugs that you can find on our website. So in addition to number chugs, I mentioned that we have a math resource directory, and we have math resources that NGPF has been created all along. They're just a little different. So, for instance, number chugs allow students to analyze graphs, charts, and tables. They make either very simple calculations like addition, subtraction, or really they're just analyzing the data presented to them and making inferences based on it. We also have spreadsheet analysis that allows students to deepen their understanding and oftentimes can be a great model for some of the functions. So something like compounding interest, you can model on a spreadsheet versus, plug and chugging in a formula, which I think could be a really useful thing for both math teachers and personal finance teachers alike. So students understand how the inner workings and not just, plug and chug, number chug. And lastly, we have lots of activities and projects with online calculators. Just to note that the number chugs don't have online calculators in them, but the math directory has curated a list of all the online calculators that we have found and used in our activities and projects. In case you want to put those in the number chugs, you can absolutely throw them in there. So let's head to the math resource directory. So on the number chugs page, it's the button at the bottom of the page, and it looks like this. So you'll see there's a table of contents that lays out for you what each tab for the math directory contains. And every resource that NGPF has that has math in it will be outlined here. For instance, if you head to activities, you'll notice a lot of them say calculate, but there's many investigate, analyze, compare that incorporate math, and it'll tell you kind of the type of math relatively that students are doing in that particular activity. In addition, as I mentioned, you could go to your online calculators tab. It'll tell you, what the calculator is, what it does, what it's used for, and if you ever want to, use one of these with your students, but you don't want to do a full activity, well, you can grab it from the Math Resource Directory now and incorporate it with your students. I think the Math Resource Directory is very helpful for math teachers, obviously, in that they can find what they need at a glance, but I think it's equally useful for personal finance teachers as well. All right, so other than NGPF resources, there are great resources that you can use to supplement hours based on your needs to incorporate math and personal finance in your classroom respectively and weave them together. So Econ EdLink has this section called Math in the Real World, and it's got some good high-level resources. I'd say the major difference between our resources and theirs is Econ EdLink is a little more focused on economics. So most of their math practice has to do with business models rather than things to do with your personal finances. So we have a break-even point one, but we don't have as much in terms of analyzing things not pertaining to us personally, but rather towards a company. Money as You Learn is another resource, and it actually aligns Common Core standards with the personal finance, and it's kind of cool, you can choose which Common Core standard or which personal finance topic, and it'll just show you what it has. It doesn't have a ton, but it has some things you can use to supplement as well. So I'd recommend those two resources. So at the beginning of the webinar, I mentioned that math and personal finance go hand in hand and work well together. And I thought I'd outline for you some instances in which it's pretty obvious. With insurance, clearly insurance agents or insurance companies, are using a statistical analysis to apply premiums and figure out different expenses. And the idea would be that students can use those statistics to understand why they need to pay a certain amount or why they don't, and can also understand the misconceptions with insurance. For instance, collected misconceptions like, I'm a safe driver, I don't need insurance. And kind of understanding the probability of getting an accident, even when you're a safe driver, can allow students to kind of understand why it's necessary to pay that premium. In addition, obviously something like taxes, where there's a tax rate, you're analyzing percentages. You can also use a quadratic with the tax curves. Investing has a host of mathematical connections. I think it's one of the most mathematically rich of topics. But for instance, you could fit functions to stock graphs. You can think about growth rate via percentages, or think about the difference between reinvesting your dividends. You can think about, you can use spreadsheets to analyze that kind of rapid volatile growth and decay of stocks, etc. And I think, in saving, it's pretty obvious that depending on which type of savings account or vehicle you're using, you can look at the difference in rate and compounding and thinking about exponential functions via Algebra 2. The resource at the bottom here is the Connecticut Department of Ed has a Common Core crosswalk that they published that aligns their personal finance standards with Common Core math standards, which I think is a really useful tool in case you're trying to figure out places that the math goes in or figure out places where the personal finance goes in. So it's a nice resource for math and personal finance teachers alike. So now I get to ways to integrate. So now that hopefully I've convinced you that it's a good idea to integrate, you might be asking, what are some ways that I can do that? And as a math teacher, I'd say you should definitely use that kind of Common Core alignment with the personal finance alignment to strengthen the skills and understandings in a new context. So it's just another form of practice, but just in a new context. And to build off of that, you're going to be using Finlit concepts to make lessons in math more relevant or contextual. I can't tell you how many times as a teacher, students ask the question sometimes, when will I use this? Well, in personal finance or in personal finance classes or any class like personal finance, kids don't ask that because they're obviously about to use it. Maybe not now, but as an adult. So they don't usually ask that question. But in math class, I know students ask a lot, like, when am I ever going to use that again? But the idea is that if you kind of show them the connection between the math and the real world, they can often see the value. And maybe you're not necessarily asking them to learn it to use later. Maybe you're asking them to learn for the sake of learning, but at least it helps students understand the context and make it more relevant to them in their lives, which I know they crave all the time. So if you're a personal finance teacher, I'd say you can use the math to further engage students. So say this is kind of in a twofold way. One is some students really like math and they're pretty good at it, and maybe they are not as jazzed about the personal finance content. I don't know why that would be the case, but maybe they are. So you would engage them that way. But there's also this idea of math anxiety that a lot of students have. And I was watching a TED Talk on it the other day, and maybe I'll include it in the slides after this, but a lot of people have math anxiety, and I think it's because, other than math and science class or STEM classes, they're not really using math, and they feel like it's just for the people who engage, in STEM after school. And I don't really agree with that. I think, numeracy is obviously a vital skill, and I think understanding the math behind the personal finance makes you a more informed consumer of all of the things you're going to be using, and showing them that you can use math in all these ways, and it's not a terrible, scary thing, and allowing them to use it in another context rather than their math class, I think kind of helps them reduce some of that math anxiety that they have, to see that, it is relevant, it is part of their life. It's not this like abstract thing that some people are good at and some people are not. And then the last point I'll make is, I know some teachers have trouble often getting their personal finance course to be a required course or part of the core, or something or getting enough numbers because of the culture of the school. But I'd say math might be a great gateway towards a required course. And I've spoken to some NGPF teachers who are trying to do this and or have done this. So you use kind of the Common Core math alignment to strengthen your argument towards it being something that's required and important for students. Although I don't know why you'd have to convince anyone. Obviously it's very important, but it might just be another tool in your arsenal. And lastly, kind of once you are convinced that incorporating one subject into the other is important, kind of tackle some of the challenges we might have doing it. And I've heard teachers say, other than saying that, it's not part of my curriculum, so I don't know where to go to find things. Well, hopefully the resources I'm giving you today will help you with that. But also, time is money, in that, a lot of times in your personal finance class or your math class, you just don't have enough time. And I'd say, in math class, if you want to put personal finance in there, you're helping students learn the math better. So it's not necessarily about time in terms of content, but this idea of personal context theory that I've linked to there is that when students can make meaning of an abstract concept in relation to themselves and something they care about, which is what personal finance is all about, a person's financial health down the road, it allows them to learn the kind of sort of related or associated concept with it. So the idea is like you'd be focusing on the math, you'd just be giving it some personal context for the student. They'll learn it deeper. So I think it's easy to say, time, but perhaps incorporating this doesn't add extra time. It's just part of that particular unit, for instance. And then, as I mentioned before with the personal finance, you're getting students to understand the personal finance deeper because they understand the inner workings. So, people have plenty of questions, and hopefully they can answer some of them for themselves based on understanding how it works. A lot of teachers also kind of focus on the fact that students are at very different levels with the math, and so they might have trouble with particular things. I'd say that's hopefully the biggest gift that NGPF can give you, is that everything we create is customizable, so you can go in there and you can take those math resources that were posted at the bottom and even embed them within a question, and give half of your students just the comprehend section with a video attached, and they're just trying to do it based on that. And then there are other kids who are better at math. You can provide maybe the equations we've linked to and said go for it with the rest, free reign. So I'd say just customize to fit your student's level, and hopefully that will help you tackle some of those challenges. As I have mentioned in the webinars that I was able to conduct, I'm happy to help at all times. So I'll be showing you my email on the last slide, and please feel free to email me if you have questions. Upcoming after this webinar is Jessica's semester course webinar on April 19th at 2 p.m. Please register on our website. The webinar is about our semester course, which is going to be a year old pretty soon, and the idea is to plan for success for the coming year. Please use NGPF resources in your class, and for those of you who did attend the webinar, your certificate should have gotten to or will get to you soon. And if you need more math resources, please email me. I'll show you my email at the end, or you can find it here in the slides, and have a fantastic spring. The last point I'm going to talk about now, which is referrals. Please refer others by going to ngpf.org/refer, which I'm going to show you right now. Our incentive for referring others to NGPF is an online banking simulation, which you'll get access to once you refer people. It's a really great resource for you and your students, and I'll just show you a little sneak peek right here. You can do a plethora of actions that simulate what you can do with a real online bank account. So I urge you to check out our referral program, refer people. We are a pretty small nonprofit organization, so really having you all spread the love to others allows us to reach more and more people. So please do that if you get the chance. Lastly, visit our website, engage us on social media, and email me if you need anything at melissa@ngpf.org. Thank you for listening to this webinar and or attending. I apologize for all of the technological difficulties. We're working on our internet connection, our webinar service. So thanks so much, and hope to see you soon.